Moving on to the second question in the basketball topic. Phil Jackson is widely regarded as one of the greatest coaches of all time, if not the greatest coach of all time with his 11 championships. Now, some say he's only great because of the players he coached, i.e. Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, Paul Gasol, and many more. Mr. Mata, starting with you first, where do you stand on this debate? Is Phil Jackson great because of his coaching style, or is it because of the players that he coached? Well, first, without dispute, I can say that Phil Jackson is a great coach. To me, in my book, when you win a championship, you're considered great, hands down. I always hear this about, oh, he's not great. For instance, Tyronn Lue, he's not great because he has LeBron James, so we shouldn't hire him. I think that's a bunch of malarkey, and that I think that if you win a championship, no matter who you are on the team, you deserve some credit. So I think this question really goes back to when you have the best players on your team, can you just simply roll the ball out and they'll still win the championship? And I think that answer is a resounding no. Yes, the best players have all the tangibles and intangibles to play great. But to me, what is so important is to have a sound organizational structure and strategy. And that's what a head coach is there for, is why he's hired. And to me, you can't discount Phil Jackson's ability to manage egos and provide a structure for the best players to flourish, the triangle, for instance. Again, that's one of his assistants' great ideas. Tex Winter, shout out to him. And we've seen great players on the other hand, where we've seen great players, leave or fail to win that championship or flourish at all because of poor management. And that's where the head coach plays a significant role. You really need to be able to get the best out of your team. And to me, it can't be argued that Phil Jackson did just that. Absolutely. Does it help to have Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant and Shaq on your team? Absolutely. Don't get me wrong. It helps to have great players, and the credit goes to them as well in terms of winning a championship. But my main point is that Phil Jackson and any coach's contribution are critical for a team's success. Thank you for your response, Mr. Mata. Mr. Rama, what is your rebuttal to Mr. Mata's response?
Okay, so my stance on this, I'll try to not be biased in any form or shape as I answer this. But I will say Phil Jackson is the greatest coach of all time. But however, with how the question is structured, I'll kind of look towards the player/coach perspective and how that's dealt. And with great power comes great responsibility. Phil Jackson, those teams that he won those 11 championships with, there's no denying that the talent was abundant. No denying that. I mean, you look at all across the board, abundant talent. But I still think that there are a few coaches that could have won championships with those rosters. Not 11, but some. So I think that in itself is taking away from Phil Jackson. And just due to the fact that I think, Phil Jackson was coaching, let's say, the Detroit Pistons this year. I mean, they're not making the playoffs. And that's just a testament to talent and the players. The players, at the end of the day, they go on to the court and they play. It takes a great leader to lead great players, but at the same time, a so-so coach can lead great players to a championship as well. I love Phil Jackson to death, and I think he's an amazing coach, phenomenal coach. But do I think that he is replaceable in those 11 championships? Yes, I do think so.
Thank you for your response, Mr. Rama. We'll now go into the Zen Master discussion.
Give me 10 more seconds. The Zen Master is phenomenal. However, I don't think that he is the reason why they won the 11 championships. He's not 50 or more percent. 75% or more is the coach, is the players. I'm sorry.
If you give Alvin Gentry those keys to the car of those teams, do you think he wins 11 championships?
He's not making it out of the parking lot. Alvin Gentry, if you give him the keys, that he's not. But I will say, though, that if you give the keys to at least a coach with some sort of leadership trait. No shot at Alvin Gentry, but if you give it to someone that knows how to lead, because Phil Jackson, it's a pro and a con, the fact that he was so even keel. Always he was very even keel, and he had to be, to an extent, managing all those egos. But at the same time, it's not like he showed that significant trait that was just above all, oh, this man is the greatest of all time coach. Like, he's not doing those things that are just unheard of, unworldly. He's doing just enough. And in this case, just enough with those talented players was good enough for 11 championships, a testament to the players, a testament to Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, Pau Gasol, all those players. At the end of the day, you got to have talent, especially in the NBA, where talent and cream always rises to the top. Very rarely we see a Cinderella story in the NBA. There's so many great
Miami Heat.
Miami Heat. They were favorites, though. They were favorites. They've always been favorites when they had the big three in Miami. And Eric Spoelstra, at the time, he was still a learning coach, but still, at the end of the day, they won a few championships there. But very rarely do we see a coach. I mean, look at Brad Stevens. He's an excellent coach, phenomenal coach. And yet Boston can't even, make it to the finals with that core team. I mean, you got Miami Heat making the finals over Boston.
Yeah, that's what I meant. They're a Cinderella story this year. They didn't win.
Oh, that's what. Sorry. Yes, I will recognize that. Miami Heat, excellent. That is a testament again to Eric Spoelstra. I know we're flip-flopping, or I am, but Eric Spoelstra, I think throughout those big 3 years, learned tremendously a lot. But I think in the NBA setting, I think more credit goes to the players as opposed to the coach in the NBA setting. That's why I think Phil Jackson, he's still great. He's amazing. But I still think that without those players, that those 11 championships aren't there for him. And I just see more credit going to those players.
I understand that. I hear that. You often hear that it's a players' league. But I think often I always hear with too many fans saying like, oh, like, the coach doesn't matter. You got, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson. They can just roll the ball out. And I think they're just discounting the ability for a head coach. Steve Kerr was a great head coach. Do I think, though, he could bring the New York Knicks to the NBA championship? Probably not. But I think he could get the best out of his team. And I think that's the most important thing for a head coach. And Phil Jackson did just that. He got obviously he's got the best players, which helps. You need 2-3 superstars to get far in the NBA. But to be able to get the best out of their talent, then that is the key to the game. Now, I think we can bring up a different point in terms of, would you rather a coach like a Brad Stevens or Greg Popovich, who has less talent, but doesn't win as many championships, but gets the most out of his talent, or do you rather Phil Jackson, who manages all those egos and the stars? For me, I always like the Greg Popovich, Brad Stevens, because I come from a smaller team, New Orleans Pelicans, and for me, success is getting to the playoffs and being a consistent contender while maybe winning a championship once in a while. While you, a Los Angeles Laker fan, wants a championship each year. Y'all get greedy. Y'all go after the best players in free agency and trades. So I think there's also a big difference in terms of market size and everything like that. So I'm interested, do you like the fact that LA and everything like that, and with Phil Jackson too, y'all get the best players, you get the so-called best coach, and instead of having those less talented teams making the playoffs? I'm interested in hearing your thoughts in terms of the difference of our fanhoods.
Yeah, and I think that the fan bias definitely comes into huge play here in the arguments that both me and you are making right now. Laker fans, I mean, I'm not going to lie, we've been spoiled with riches. We've been spoiled with riches when it comes to acquiring talent. Drafting talent, I would say these last few years, it's been hit or miss. You look at how Ingram has progressed now with your team, but outside of that, I mean, it's been really hit or miss with those top draft picks. But I would say when it comes to free agency, I mean, the Lakers organization as a whole has been just notorious, I should say, for pretty much getting the best free agent big man that's available at the time. You know, you look back Shaq, you look back at Kareem, you look back at now getting or AD in the past year. So it is a bit of a spoil with riches mentality. But I still think, though, when it's all said and done, when it's all said and done, I would take a good roster and an okay coach in basketball than a phenomenal coach with an okay roster in basketball. I think in basketball, if anything, what comes into play from a coaching perspective is leadership. I mean, in any setting, a coach should have a leadership quality. But I think in basketball in specific, as long as you can manage your egos, and a lot easier said than done, I guarantee that. But I think that it's less of an X's and O's perspective when it comes to I have good talent, rather than a X and O's perspective when you don't have good talent and you're trying to make it work with all of those technique-driven approaches. But with Phil, he just had to make sure that the egos were in line. And in many cases, they weren't, with Shaq and Kobe, with, I'm sure that you've watched The Last Dance, and I'm sure everyone else watches The Last Dance, and seeing how difficult it is to manage egos. I still think, regardless of everything, the talent will rise to the top. And more often than not, the best team in the NBA usually wins. You can disagree with me, and I'm sure you will, but I think that history has shown that in NBA, usually the team with the best roster wins.
This much is true. I have to say that we can't discount coaches' contributions. Like I just said in my main point, and Phil Jackson is great. But I'll end this segment with a quick question, and I'll answer it myself here. Do you think Phil Jackson is the greatest coach of all time? I don't think so. I think it's Greg Popovich.
In the basketball setting, Peter, or is this
in the basketball setting?
Just okay? In the basketball setting, I think Krzyzewski, Duke. I got to go Duke. And we touched base on college, but I just think that what he's done for the period of time that he's been there, I just admire him. I've watched a few videos of him and the Duke documentaries. And he coaches the U.S. Basketball team. I think I think now Greg Popovich just took over the U.S. basketball team. But I think overall, Krzyzewski and Duke, he is I can't discount my other guy, Mr. John Wooden, too, but that's kind of before our time. We didn't really get to experience that firsthand. It's just more so of the stories that have been passed down and his impact and legacy that we hear. But I think that we can't not mention him. But I think if you're giving me a roster of random players and I just got to pick a coach, average Joes, you know what I'm saying? Average Joes, and I get to my first selection for who's going to coach them. I'm actually going Krzyzewski with this one. And I think Greg Popovich is 1B to Krzyzewski's 1A. It's right there. It's right there.